Hello and welcome to Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we talk about the books that might be on a pastor or minister's bookshelf, or that of a theology student or a seminary student. And we talk about what might be a good one to invest in and what might not be perhaps the best value that you could think of. And we talk about various authors and series of books. And if you want something to be discussed in this channel, please leave a message underneath. If you like what we're doing, click on thumbs up, subscribe and click on the bell, and then you'll get a message next time we release an episode of Pastor's Library. So thank you very much for being with us today. Today we're going to talk about systematic theology. Oh, wow, what a subject. Systematic theology tends to be a volume or a 2 or 3 volume book which will deal with big issues like the nature of God, the Trinity, Christology, pneumatology. It will talk about eschatology, all the ologies. It will talk about key issues about Christ and salvation and end times and all types of issues to do with the faith. And that's probably why some people have critically referred to systematic theology as dogmatic theology, because systematic theologies are usually spoken about from a dogmatic point of view, from a doctrinal point of view, and it tells you what you should believe. And of course, depending on the author's point of view, that can actually differ quite a lot. For example, most of us evangelicals sign up to the Evangelical Alliance Statement of Belief. But what I might think it says might be quite different to what you think it says. And we might both sign up for it, but the wording is quite clever because it embraces us all. So really, we have to recognize that the author will make a lot of difference to what you see and believe in a systematic theology work. So when I was growing up, everybody I knew that went to Bible college had got this on their shelf: Louis Berkhof, Systematic Theology. Now, being a young man, I only thought this was the only volume of systematic theology. I didn't think anybody else wrote on this subject. I thought if you had a systematic theology, it was Berkhof's. But this is actually a volume that's written primarily by a deterministic thinker, a Calvinist. Griefy went on to be a member of staff at the Calvin Institute. This is a guy who has a very definite viewpoint. And even if you share his viewpoint, what I would say to you today is there are a lot better systematics out there. And so whereas this is the one that lots of ministers that are maybe coming up for retirement age saw this as their go-to book, what I would say to you is now is there are other books that are go-to books that you should consider. And if you are coming from a reform perspective, then Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology is probably the most popular in a lot of Bible colleges, seminaries today. And Wayne Grudem, who writes quite widely in Christian circles, has written quite heavily, for example, on the issue of prophecy. Wayne Grudem has a book out here which has just gone into a second edition, which this is the first, but the second edition, as it's 2020, is eminently quotable for degree level essays. As you probably are aware, most seminaries, most Bible colleges will want you to make most of your quotations from things that have been written in the last 25 years, whether they be books or whether they be journals. And you can't always be going back. And so Wayne Grudem, who I would imagine has made quite a lot of money from this book, has issued a second edition so that we can all keep quoting from it. I'm not saying that to be cynical, but it's a very wise business decision, and it is a very good book. Not my choice, though. If you said to me, Stephen, If you had to just take one of those 30 books from your bookshelf that you've talked about having, this wide range of systematics that you've got, which one would it be? Well, the one that I feel very close to and that I really sort of a bit of an attachment to is J. Rodman Williams' Renewal Theology. Now this, I bought it in 3 volumes, which is now republished as a single volume, which lets you know that the single volume is quite a large book because these 3 volumes together are incorporated into the one. But Renewal Theology is written by a charismatic guy, and it has a really good aspect which I think engages Pentecostals and charismatics together. So it's a good one to look at. So whereas that might be my go-to volume, the latest version was 1996, which means it's very borderline now as to whether or not you could get away quoting that for a bachelor's or master's essay. So looking at things that are quotable, I spoke to Roger Forster from Ichthus in London, and he said to me, "Oh, Stephen, it's really Thomas Finger you want to recommend." Now, Thomas Finger has written the Contemporary Anabaptist Theology, which again is in 3 volumes, but this one was released in 2020, so it's quite quotable. And this, I think, has an absolutely excellent wide range of subjects that it covers. It's quite strong on the eschatology, on end times issues. It offers an awful lot of in-depth issues on the history of Anabaptism as an aside, and it talks about assumptions that one makes in a book like this. And I think that's quite bold because most authors just make those assumptions and tell you them. But Finger talks about how those assumptions have come about, which I think is probably quite brave. And so if you said to me, Stephen, okay, you like J. Rodman Williams, what else do you like? I like this, I really do. 3 volumes by Thomas Finger, Anabaptist Systematic Theology. So that would definitely be on my list. The big growth industry in publishing is in the Pentecostal theology field. After all, Pentecostal growth is still running away like mad worldwide. And we thank God for the growth the church has seen primarily through the Pentecostals and the new churches in recent years. And Pentecostals have always had Stanley Horton as their systematic theology. As it's reprinted quite regularly, it's still quotable. But I would say to you that whereas this might have been probably the first widespread systematic used by Pentecostals, I would say to you there are better ones now. So whereas this might be on a reading list for your degree, what I would say is there are better products. There are 3 Pentecostal systematics that I am going to recommend to you. The first one is by probably Pentecost's widest written, most highly considered author, and that's Amos Yong. And Yong, in fact, has written so much, there have been books written about his work now, about his fields of study. Amos Yong has written a lot, for example, into the field of mission. And when you understand that his thoughts have been very much along the lines of mission, then this systematic, which is called Renewing Christian Theology, Systematics for a Global Christianity, that will be understood by you when you understand his background is in missional work. And so this book has much of a global context. It's not quite as westernized as some of the systematics that we are used to using. And at about 450 pages, it's an excellent book. So I do recommend that to you, although that still won't be the number one I would recommend. Apostolic Theology is one of the newest. This is by Jonathan Black, who's a fairly young theologian. He's at Regent's College in the UK, writing for journals and always looking for something new. And he turned his hand to this about 800-page systematic about 3 or 4 years ago. And this book is written from the viewpoint of someone who's been brought up in the Apostolic Church, a Pentecostal denomination. And I would say to you, this is not my favourite systematic, but I am really glad that I have it on my bookshelf. I do consult it, it's helpful, but maybe not quite as widely acceptable as some of the others, and not as much maybe as the one I'm going to show you now. This one is a 300-pager. It's written by Wofgang Vondey, and Vondey has written probably the leading systematic of any Pentecostal today. This book is a really excellent book. I found I could get into it. Unlike most systematics, this is one I felt I could almost just sit and read cover to cover. And it cases everything in terms of the gospel. So it talks about salvation, sanctification, baptism, healing, commissioning. And it goes on then to talk about issues like the common good and community living, and the church's mission movement and ecclesiology. It's a very, very good systematic. It's affordable. It's a very well-made hardbound book. And if I had to just recommend one Pentecostal systematic, this would be it. Now, I'm almost through this subject, except not everybody wants a Pentecostal systematic. Not everybody wants a Reformed one. But everybody, I think, would prefer to have one. If you have one systematic on your bookcase today, which one should it be? 40 years ago, it should have been Berkhof. What should it be now? Well, I would suggest to you it should be Anthony Thiselton's Systematic Theology. Anthony Thiselton is an Anglican theologian, and he has written exhaustively. He has written some of the best commentaries that are out there, and some of the most academic ones as well. Thiselton, I feel, has an awful lot to offer. And this book, which is about 450 pages, is well put together. It's well bound. Its layout is sensible. It presents in the sort of way that you would expect a systematic to present. Except it also throws in a few more challenging issues. For example, it's this systematic that has an issue on, has a section on atheism. I ask you, why? But it's actually very, very good. It's a great resource for pastors in particular. The section on God, his personhood, the Trinity, his love and grace, I think that section won me over. I think it's really, really excellent. But this talks about the need for coherence, the merging of philosophy with theology, and it also talks about truth, which is something so many people want to skirt around these days. But it's a very, very good one, and I think it offers 15 sections, and every section has got multiple sub areas, and it's an excellent systematic. And I believe that Anthony Thiselton has actually taught this at university level, and this came out of his notes. So it's a good option. So here we go. If you just want one systematic theology instead of Steve Redmond's shelf load, I would go for this one. If you want something which is of a more Pentecostal leaning, I would go for Vondey, because that's very good indeed. If you want one of a more reformed leaning, then I would go for the new second edition of Wayne Grudem. And if you want something old and comfortable, like a warm pair of slippers, I would look at J. Rodman Williams' Renewal Theology. But those are my tips for systematic theology. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you like this, click on the bell and subscribe if you want to know next time we release a pastor's library. Remember to leave any notes or questions that you have, or ideas, particularly ideas for another episode of Pastor's Library. Thank you very much for being with us today. God bless.